Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Bud Light. Bud Light destroyed itself with an inclusive campaign that nobody wanted. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from Little Black Book Online, How Not to Handle an Inclusive Marketing Campaign. Also from Adweek, 2024's marketing strategy is no longer about brand DNA. The brand genome is the central strategic tool leaders have at their command. This is how ridiculous it's gotten. They're talking about brand genomes, not just the brand DNA. They're really overcomplicating things. You just need to make the kind of products that people want, and you need to make them attractive to your core customer base. And of course, you need to know who that core customer base is. Anti-Woke Beer Company teams up with Riley Gaines to launch Real Women of America calendar. Conservative Dad's Ultra-Right Beer has launched a calendar aimed at defeating wokeism in women's sports. He's a great promoter. He understands. This is what his customer base wants. And when he does promotions, they get covered in the media. It's free advertising for him. Brands are in a constant struggle for relevancy. As times change and demographics evolve, companies must find new ways to retain their existing consumer base while also expanding their reach to new consumers. With Gen Z displacing millennials as the demographic to market to, brands have begun taking strident measures to curry favor with a new generation of consumers. In the wake of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations of 2020, which saw young people globally take to the streets to protest police brutality and racial prejudice, Gen Z has very generally become the social progress generation. Brands have responded by releasing marketing centered around messages of inclusivity and societal improvement to varying degrees of success. Back in early April of this year, on April 1st to be exact, Bud Light attempted to jump on this trend of socially conscious advertising. To say the brand has had a rough year as a result of it would be an understatement. This article from The Guardian is a great reference. It talks about exactly what was going on inside of Bud Light's marketing department. Their marketing department knew what they were doing. They knew they were trying to plant seeds of inclusion, and they were hoping to get away with it. They obviously did not get away with it, with Bud Light being the worst boycott in all of American history. The idea for Mulvaney's March Madness post came from a Bud Light team member who, quote, wanted to push and make change, says a former Bud Light employee. The team member was excited to, quote, slowly but surely plant the seeds of inclusion. The brand then went to Captivate, a top California-based influencer marketing agency. Bud Light was trying to advertise to the LGBT community, says a former employee of Captivate. They obviously wanted to pick an influencer who was part of that community. The actor and singer Renee Rapp was also considered. They recall, though it's unclear if those conversations ever got off the ground. Quote, I was surprised at the LGBT focus given the Bud Light name, but I was interested to see where it would go from here. So even though Bud Light was deceptive about how this promotion came to be, they never really publicly explained it. It was something that was completely approved by everyone at the highest levels of Anheuser-Busch. And they even made the Dylan Mulvaney can themselves in their own in-house marketing department. Bud Light's decision to tap transgender social media influencer Dylan Mulvaney to promote the brand's Easy Carry contest couldn't have gone much worse. Revenue has plummeted 10.5% for Anheuser-Busch, and the brand has been falling from its top spot among the U.S. beer market for the first time in over 2 decades, with Modelo Especial from Constellation Brands taking over. Boycotts from conservatives and members of anti-trans groups quickly gained mass attention as social media networks were flooded with consumers disavowing the brand, and perhaps most famously, videos of disgruntled Bud Light drinkers firing guns at cases of the beer in protest of the partnership. On paper, recruiting a social media influencer to promote a product declining in popularity among young consumers seems like a foolproof way to subvert brand expectations and earn a couple of younger customers in the process. Unfortunately for Bud Light, Gen Z's attitude toward beer and alcohol, generally for that matter, is one of indifference at the moment. Young drinkers would more likely grab a spiked seltzer or abstain from drinking entirely than reach for a big-name light beer. While it's commendable that in a time characterized by immense polarization among people, a brand wants to send a message that everyone, regardless of their interests or identities, should be able to grab a brew and have a good time with each other. Unfortunately for Bud Light, with sales falling and few new consumers coming to the brand, it's difficult to think of anything that this partnership achieved aside from throwing fuel on the flames of the already incendiary LGBT moral panic in U.S. political discourse. There is plenty of criticism that can be directed towards Bud Light, not because it gave in to the woke mob and presented audiences with a trans spokesperson, but because it underestimated how a dramatic shift in its brand identity would alienate the demographic it had spent decades cultivating, while also coming off as insincere to the demographic they were attempting to market to. If they wanted to have a trans Bud Light, they could have made like a pink and blue can, and actually Bud Light people in general probably would not have cared. Anyone who was interested in supporting that kind of a product could have gone and bought it. But they probably knew that unless they take over whatever is the most popular product category, of course no one's interested in buying it. Bud Light's ads have always presented its product as the beverage of choice for the sports-watching, good-timing everyman, often with a healthy serving of humor and satire. Bud Light's own party animal, the bull terrier Spuds MacKenzie, was fawned over by bikini-clad women in their campaigns from the late 1980s, and the Real Men of Genius TV and radio spots from a decade earlier lampooned the often eccentric traits, likes, and behaviors of the modern American male. Those campaigns were entertaining and memorable, as well as effective at selling the product, but no doubt created with a heterosexual male audience in mind, and evidently a socially conservative one as well. Suffice to say, the Mulvaney partnership was a jarring departure from those campaigns and even from Bud Light's contemporary spots, such as the Dilly Dilly campaign that ran from 2017 to 2018, and the Easy to Drink ad that ran during the Super Bowl, which featured humor reminiscent of the brand's older advertisements, but better suited to the sentiments of a diverse 21st century audience. The Instagram post that sparked the outrage is innocuous and features humor much like Bud Light's past campaigns. Mulvaney, dressed like Holly Golightly from Breakfast at Tiffany's, jokes about lack of sports knowledge, saying that the March Madness, a collegiate basketball tournament, initially confused for mass hysteria, is still cause for celebration. Considering the audience Bud Light's marketing team had previously spoken to for decades, it's understandable why a campaign with a trans person who doesn't like sports might not go over well. Frustratingly for Bud Light's parent company, Anheuser-Busch InBev, the campaign didn't send younger drinkers scrambling to buy their beer either. This brings up the ever-growing issue of tokenism. It can be easy for brands to cloak themselves in the iconography of popular political causes and convince themselves that it will increase their favorability among a more youthful customer demographic. But as we've seen with the still unfolding fallout from the Mulvaney partnership, political solidarity alone won't win you customers. Young consumers now more than ever are skeptical about the motives of the brands advertising to them. Gen Z realizes that companies have at least a superficial understanding of the interests of the age demographics they market to. They also know that companies will use that limited knowledge to try courting their support with targeted messaging that is oftentimes not indicative of the actual values of the company selling products to them. While the representation of minorities and sentimental messages of inclusion are appealing to consumers, recent research commissioned by the Gay Times and the ad agency Karmarama found that 72% of the LGBT population considers its deception in advertising as insincere and performative. So stop trying to sell things to people based on their sexual preferences. Just sell them a product that they will enjoy. It's that simple. Anheuser-Busch InBev had an opportunity to save face and take ownership of its marketing decisions and company values. The company instead backpedaled, distributing a letter to wholesalers dismissing the partnership as an informal promotion and claiming that they did not intend to create controversy or make a political statement. Mulvaney also asserted in a later TikTok post that after the initial uproar caused by the partnership, Bud Light turned a blind eye, leaving Mulvaney to fend off more bullying and transphobia than could have ever been imagined, while the brand performed damage control. No, the Bud Light people did not reach out to Mulvaney, and the reason they didn't was because everybody in that department was either moved out of that department or fired. Alyssa Heinerschied gone, her boss gone. There was really nobody left. Bud Light should have been honest with its customers about how the program came together, why the program came together, and whether or not Dylan Mulvaney was supposed to ever be the new spokesmodel for the company. Because the way it was presented, Dylan Mulvaney was supposed to be the spokesperson for Bud Light. They completely rebranded the beer with Dylan Mulvaney. And that's what killed the brand. One thing is sure, if Bud Light was legitimately invested in LGBT interests beyond their marketing, then the brand's actions since have indicated the contrary. Perhaps the biggest lesson that can be learned from this whole fiasco is that inclusive marketing, although well-intentioned sometimes, is ineffective at achieving its desired result and may instead exacerbate the political polarization it was meant to counter. For this kind of messaging to work, companies must be willing to stick to the beliefs they publicize and understand the demographics that they appeal to well enough to avoid alienating them. The idea that a company, just because they own a brand, that they also own that brand relationship with the consumer, is the biggest lesson coming out of Bud Light. Yes, you can own the trademarks, but it doesn't mean that you own the customer. A customer has to be satisfied with the company every time they buy your product. As long as you don't make radical changes, consumers will be happy to continue buying a product that they're used to buying. Almost all of us are routine consumers, and we buy a brand because a brand is a promise that we know we can count on. When they change that brand, when they violate the consumer relationship by trying to inject politics and agendas inside of that brand, the brand is going to get ruined. Just like has happened with Disney, just like has happened with Bud Light, it will happen every time they try to pull this. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.